Ublumi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Dunananik Show. I am your host this evening. My name is Margaret Nixana, and we are broadcasting live here out of the Inuvialuit Communication Society located in Inuvik. On today's episode, we have a pre-recording of Agnes White. You might remember her being on the show, on the live show on March 16th, and on that episode she was telling stories in her Inuvialuit language. And on today's episode, she will be telling the same stories in English. We hope you enjoy the show.
My name is Agnes White. Maiden name is Gruben. I'm from Tuktoyaktok to begin with. But then I'm Inuvialuit. My dad is a hunter and trapper. He was born and raised over in Inuvialuit, old Inuvialuit. There was 10 siblings from my grandmother's side, or from her marriage. And then in that same token, they all grew up, and we moved to, when my grandfather died, I guess my dad moved over to Gangyanak, 20 miles south of Tuktoyaktok. And my dad got married to Princess Lenny. They always been up in Naluk. Most of the time before she was married, she was raised in Delta with my grandfather. My grandmother was new to the country because she was Gwich'in. My mother was born in Old Peel River. But you tell her that if she was still alive, that if she was Gwich'in, she says, no way. She says, I'm Inuvialuit. But for this, it's the truth. She only knows her dad is her dad. You can't tell her any other way that her real dad was Lyman Kui. He said, my dad is my dad, Linig Lansalog, and that's what she tell you straight to your face. And there's no other way. Because, you don't tell anybody that you can't change their mind. So that's the way. But anyway, we all moved to Naluk, and that's where I was born. Yeah, they got married.
So for people from the south that have no idea, what language are you going to tell your story in?
Inuvialuit.
And to be specific about the dialect, is it Salermiut? Is it...
Salermiut. This is Salermiut Inuvialuit, or we call them Tarermiut, the saltwater people on the shores of the salt ocean, Arctic. Tarermiut or Inuvialuit is the same thing. Tarermiut is on the coast of salt, but Inuvialuit is a true Inuvialuit, because there's a lot of other nations, and different culture, a little bit of culture. Like I grew up on Banks Island. Well, Susie came in fall of 42, late 43, really late, and early summer. Wanted my dad to trap with her. Her husband had died 1940, Fred Wilkie, and they lived on Blue Fox Harbor. So my dad said okay and packed away. We went. So we spent winter. My sister Mabel she was born 42, so she had to be November, December. She was just crawling, so she was just a little baby. But anyway, we started living with Susie. It's me being Inuvialuit. I didn't know who I was, but all I know is my language is Inuvialuit. I didn't speak English, nothing. Not any kind of, big different language or anything. It's just Inuvialuit, that's all I know. But anyway, we started wintering we crossed with Nanualuk. Susie had the Nanualuk schooner. She had for deckhand Abraham Carpenter and Michael Amos. And so my dad went across, we all went across, and our belongings and my dad's dogs. It's about a schooner that my dad had bought from Stringer Kiesuk in Aklavik in 42. How my mom didn't want my dad to buy the schooner because it was a riverboat, she says. And that's what I'm going to tell you. And it took, let's see, how many winters? 1, 2, 3 winters we just had the boat, and the boat sank right in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. I can remember. It traumatized me because I can still remember out of nowhere I could see the two big waves when I closed my eyes, and boat was just like a little cork. North Star was trying to tow it over the storm and everything, but you could see it was just so far down, it was just like in a little pan. The boat was so small. And then Fred got afraid, and my dad, I guess he talked, so it just cut on a dead man behind North Star in the back of it. That's where the rope was tied, and my Fred Carpenter axed it and cut the rope. Otherwise, it would have taken the whole end of the North Star's back. Would have sank with it, and where would we be? We'd be all drowned. Okay, this is what I want to tell you the story. Inuvialuit. Ingilan, ubanga atira atidak, Agnes white gubit, tayo atira. Ubanga Inuvialuit yame apag inugoktuaka, kidiya yung ne. Inugoka me tayo vanita mani tuktu yaktu me takluni tayo pang slakaktuaka. Susi wilkimainer mani na nereakto kati suklugo. Tubakada na klunis Susi Fred Wilkimik. Pagasin ng iktak ukiya katigiyan ni. Tayo ni ukiyan ni. Ukiyak sangwak si manasid. Kemeta nekiksainik na chiliako yut. Na chiliak tilugit na amamaga pitlaktok. Ano kak sinigago ka kiglomen wila sinigain ngok. Muna kay lugit kay inuit kanya magada pisuk luni sa maluni na pa na without diga wino. Ano kiglomen ano kagloanak tak. Tay maliman na mama gumisigi Beluga. Nutima kinyaw din niya kinyak lumalo. Tay ka inug nudim. Kinyak si mablunga mama gupit kay gamang. Inno kay ka nagtapis wadaktuk. Mama gupiya kasin. Sinan makuha magada pinik. Ano nagsama? Nan makuha nila ito nagaylunin. Kimmingilunin, kamutilunin. Kaya malang kinayak si mablunga na sumikswit ito ka mang. Ano't kaya kisimit nan mahugnani gait. Kaglimata nutim kis pagalut tadjolo. Ano yung naligo ko ka nan maksimanik tak. Mamang apagapiya suwisi. Wita ulok to ane. Tayo ni wita mata. Tayo rati kuiksak. Kakya nalukyak. Ikalugalula pagalut tadjolo. Win nakip kaktiluin ngo. Win na mekilamigo ka susat siksigay da kimin ngo kanuyak to kalakait. Kimin ngo magukludiglo. Pag magukutiktaw digay tap ko asitamat angutit. Aligag nigok so matirati apagilagalaga. Tadyo kisingok ta kiradi lili ay lagog tatsok. Rati go kaya sitak to kami go kay may yaksiyo. Pag magokpiya, tayo manilig, may gokpinya ka. Tadyo gok tikin na may suka silwa, blinigok suka, pina. Siko. Tadyo gokpiya kaya galog mo na. Ikiman pa sa ako Beluga si Bonon. Sayuk pang sayuk ko wida kinnguniak kaptigot. Tadyo gok tayo na alam makitok. Tikiw di palugago kasin. Tayo nga ni tayo ilang atam na kulian neriga una kulian neriga ap. Tayo nit kaklo da. Paing slaking miyan niya tatakalo. Tayo ananang matok kodani. 1944, May 7, tayo ananang ito kuyak. Tai masina tai ni awang human tai apang ma Beluga Inuvialuit umiak. Inuvialuit tam na Inuvialuit ga mama ga pia Inuvialuit ni go umiak pang mek. Suno umiak pak Beluga go. Mamang be na gay. Kiviniak tak. Wag kung miutalo go umiak tayo mit chuitok. Tayo mo kumitayo taman na makak. Nerilogo kiviniak tak kupay da kutok pada. Pagana lang nito. Tayo kaktigap tak stand papalok tam na tuniyok kaya. Suniglikap tak stoliking migon. Tayo apagap tak niwe ko pina niwe ko saga umiak. Mamang ma akililer mi nga pagkayame niwe ko kibig pa ni sunyak pek tayo maligin na ya. Tayo masi niwe rap tiyo tayo ikakto ni ikaksakalak to ni puday lamon ikagay to ni sikom kapsi ubluta kapsi tayo ma Inuit no takake sumilika po dahil may inuwiak tugo tayo man talimat kaya sipek sugit umiak pa tayo no takake inuit sikutiyay po dahil may tayo uki kakabluta sa kapamon uki miyon siko na reaksyon niya mi pina uki yuan ito ya palu kami sa kabame. Tayo masinikat king migapta. Imnak palong mi uki yuan Imnak palong mi asino ki kaslo ta. Tayo sa kabamon sanay magata ligaliak no astalog ang lalo umiat. Ataw chiko ni kaksak pagtuan ni takayok pa kami karni arik po duba. Sanay ang mata. Pina. Ikaksa ko man ang mata. Tasan nayak to kaptay ka no astalog sunawag kasi chap ta Beluga lo. Kaya man na ikaksi mavluta mi sugay tok. Iloadik umiyak inni ko day sugay tot. Ano, kaudit lakati ko Nelson head likotat ko chingni dualog uyakay nak nubog palog. Tama ap ko sa akin pulo, ano tu binagay ni tayo kit kane. At pagkapiyak, mamam nun, nutakat. Magititak tulo kita, ano akto kit ipkiwiyak siyon At tao saksama, kayo ka, na makayog na naktak umiyamatani, imakto, kilaktak. Imay ko niyo ka katayog niyo ka kilakso kalaga imagok suka siblo ni kilame ka anit kubluta apang ma nuasta ta kunami yung na utsiok luta kaviaklo ni tayo ano kay mami malik pag kaviat king matayo apang matiyo kami yung umiak nuasta ing miyok ti guminiaka. Tap Inuvialuit anang nirlupitray nutakalo nuliakalo anan amamalugo ka nukalo ema. Tap kuat ikakita umyamun iksugit no astamon. Ay man ere ni vludik iksui ma vludik ataw sa kamaralo katataktok. Anang nirop katay galaga apang matiyublo nuka kasunawa frying. Tayo masinu palugay apang mapiyay kilamek. Wililo anang nirlo. Kimid nutsig kilamek. Wakibi makiktak uban nuasta na yung mimagiga kilamek ludik iriniludik. Kilamek aso kimid nuk tikturay tamainik amiloik piyayong ni tuyot Tirigan niya vinakangamik amit ay piyayong nun. Ang Inuvialuit at Inuvialuit ay piyayong magpagay. Tirigan niya at ulilo no takkalo tamanig no takkanilo. Ananagalo at sagalo tamainik nun maning mata. Taima sa nakpesi apang mapiyait. Ki ikidik no astamon ulilo. Anang nilo. It's Moses. Taima sinapang mapiyane. YouTube aning. I said, no, I'm hanging. Pina, apang madaywa. Ako ati umimagiga. No, apang himalay kikpin. Ikinyak tami. Ikuy na no astamon. Maliklu apang mau kasi ikim mga. Tayo apang atakun na tagaka. Ikiyo aking ulilik pehalublo niya. Tayo piyane asin namukpeungim na sabi ka pingokta kapan eh. Tatpi ko masamay litsibiakalong mo na ha. Iligaluag ka maliw ki kapta sunalikak kasi aksaluago yok. Imakiak natirmi kiningilo ni natirmul kataktuak pakingita. Tayo ikuda no astamon. Tayo masin aklunami kiliwinagata. Beluga kalit chuklu kalilang magat ko noastam kiyuk paluk ta kiyuk sama ako at tunuan ita yung akiliga. Kila kalu kalin niyak sima tayo na kun na kaya malik palu ita kan na asuna ikakivik iliwi ako talog lokano umiyakaw yak suko ekni kayo akalupuk tayo ak suko itok takan na umiyakog malit ta kami ano kaklo ni malit iluan ni tayo masina sukoy kami igaliak piyak apam nun aklo na ako tuki ngayo aksiya tuki ngayo tasaman ni pa umivinaktuak aswim na sunan na vivinaktuak tuki ngayon may kaklunak, kipi Beluga, daima. Imagaya ka nirama sinaksi yung nirama nutim, ut kalu miluan ut lanak tugot, an napalukludasi, daima. Suari wilu sulika, suari ut umyamit tuat tamani kibutiyay, tariw tayo kitik pealo anong matayo tam na umyak. Beluga may katiliga pang maumiyak niyo vertangak tayo kiwiyak puyo yuit kiga. Kang muna glaan kanokotok kako kalwak lunga. Nangiyak na naktak nangiyak nito nga tayo ba ni kigot lukod kasanin na okama. Isumaliok talaga ma nangiyak na naktak ka tam na tuktakput. Sumikaw nga kinekto ni nunay tok. So naktama kami khernak si Bloni malik bait annayok sinaklodat nuastaman now diane aligaleam umiangan. After they cut the big rope, we travel and I fell asleep for a while. When I woke up, when it got calm, I looked down. Here was Baillie Island right into the harbor. It's not a harbor, it's a straight lake. It's a big far as you could see, it's all shallow, say, along the main land. It's a long sand spit right in the tip of it. It's Baillie Island. And my mom said the last time the Oilers were there was 1925 when they caught the bowhead. Wow. That she remember. Wow. It was all kinds. There was a Hudson Bay store, and there were houses. I've seen that, and the RCMP house, and there was the Dunam's house. There was quite a few houses in that Baillie Island, as I remember the first time when they said that's Baillie Island.
Were they close to the shore?
Right on the shore, right on the point.
That's why they're not there no more.
That's right, it's all washed out. The last time we were there, in 1948, that's when my sister was born there. Next following few years I went through, there was nothing. It's all washed out. It's very deep. I went, just for my curiosity, I went with NT to work because they haul all the winter supply right to Taloyo, Spence Bay, all the settlements. They haul all these barges from Hare River. And of course, I'm being nosy, see what they're doing, and I was always at the captain and asking him questions, and says, Agnes, we hit Baillie Island. We're going around the island, but we're going to cut across. You wait and see. When you get to the deep part, you're going to feel it. It's just like going down. He said, that's how deep it is from the shallows of the water. The shallows I was telling you, like inlet, harbor, and all that shallow. But once it's just like sliding down into the sea, and you just watch it and feel it. So I was watching very closely and the feel of it. He said, "Here we go." You could just feel it going right down deep into the deep. And I said, "Oh my goodness!" I says, and they had a machine where it draws all the bottom of the ocean, and it's not, you know, people always think it's always the flat, but it's not like that. It's just like any other inland. There's hills, there's cliffs, and you name it, it's all in there. Like for this simple thing that I used to smile about, when they first started drilling, the oil company in the Arctic, well, they had few meetings that comes up, places, and they came into Tuck one time and said, "Oh, the oil company's having a meeting." And they had these two old ladies from Coppermine, elders. They said, they came in there and they went to the community hall to sit, and all these white people up in the front there, they're always the speakers, you know, intimidate a lot of Inuvialuit, and they're afraid to say anything, eh? So these two old ladies from Coppermine looked at my mom. She knew that she could speak their language. She says, "What are we doing here?" My mom answered, "We're here for meeting with this oil company." "Why?" The old ladies asked my mom. She said, they're going to drill in the ocean, in the Arctic. They want to drill. Ah. He said, once they drill, he said, all the ocean will drain off. Once, telling my mom in their language, once it's all drained off, then we'll pick all the seals we want. Just the idea, they never heard of drilling in the ocean. There were two old ladies. My mom said, "No, it's not like that." So Mom had to explain to them. "Oh, who now? Oh, so that's what it is." That's the old lady's reply. It's enough for now. Yes, on NTCL, just to be nosy. And the captain, I got along with the captain and the cook for some reason, because I was always, and I can cook, because I cooked for 20 years with the oil company. Seasonal jobs on offshore, drilling offshore, 80s, 70 and 80s, latter part of 70 and 80s, early. They were drilling offshores. I stayed out there till all summer, November, December, till those tugboats couldn't run anymore. But it wasn't thoughtful wishes. It's good, but to live in that environment, no. There's nothing in there, nothing for the future. I'd rather be in the land. I'd rather not see a drill out there, because once it's oil spill, there's no way that they're going to clean it up. They'll destroy all our mammals, you name it, in the ocean. Sure, they talk good, but once that oil starts seeping, blow out, it'll stick to the ice and the water. There's no way they're going to clean it up. I've seen that. It's just for the oil. If the greed, they have. I've been in through states with my husband traveling, and I've seen where the Americans have resource for their oil and gas all over every state. So seeing that, what more they want? And they want over to Iraq and all through China and all through Russia. What more they want? But the way to get it out, like I said, is too expensive. But they were thinking of all these. They set up greenhouses on all the pipeline through the south, but it's not going to happen. It's going to take forever, unless they want to even get ships right over to Herschel Island to haul it through the Straits of Amundsen Sound, all through the Eastern Arctic, and come back through the Montreal and Quebec, all those places. I mean, like Labrador and all those. That's a long haul. What if something mishap happens?
Right.
There you go. You just might as well say goodbye to the Arctic.
Yeah. I like the idea of M18, gas for Tuk and for Inuvik. What are your thoughts on M18, that well outside of Tuk? Do you think it's a
I
good
was
one?
there cooking when they hit the gas.
Yeah.
Well, if for their own use, I guess it's all right.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot. There's so much politics tied in with people. A lot of people should have left the way they used to have their own log houses and everything. The government came with housing, and now they got tied up with the government. Now everybody wants houses. You gotta have housing. They don't want nothing. They control everything. And how's it gonna be if we start getting gas? What they should do is, it's our gas on our land. Well, start building the housing too. In turn, the government. That'd be the best thing. The way I see it. Well, if you're gonna put it in those government houses, well, we're gonna have to charge you for the gas and everything else. Maybe you have to come to compromising somewhere.
What happened in Sax Harbor when people made money?
They had it for their own use and everything else, and they use it properly. They have their own houses, and I grew up over there. What they did was Hamlet came in. You told Hamlet, you just maintain the road and the government houses, but not the private houses. But in same token, there was Inuvialuit, so I treat them all alike, but they weren't supposed to go across the bay or 5 miles radius to say that's ours. Like in Tuk, the Hamlet said, that's ours, you can't touch it. And what kind of law is that? I was there cooking for 73 people, Eastern Arctic, when they really wanted to become Hamlet. Oh, I heard them say, oh, we'll do the paperwork for you. You tell us what to do. That's all we're going to do, paperwork. And you do the whole thing, the work. You control it. Yeah. Once they got their foot in there, it's forget it. It's right off for the Inuvialuit.
Well, you were talking the other day about when in the 40s, when people got successful in Sax Harbor, then the government showed up and wanted to charge tax.
Yeah, that's when my dad bought the schooner, Beluga. My dad went uptown and he said he's got to get some papers done, and I still got the papers of how the RCMP fill out the forms. Inuvialuit, Charlie Grubin, half-breed. What kind of language is that? Half-breed. He's part Inuvialuit. My grandfather's from Switzerland. My Persis Grubin, half-breed. I mean, just plain as can be. What am I? I could be a dog. I could be anything, half and half. I just put you there, half-breed. I still got those papers. And they give you a bunch of disc numbers. I still remember my disc number, W3-807. He said, hang on to those, put it around your neck, use that. Never forget the number. And my dad threw those to my mom. What's that for? He says, you got to remember that. That's what they want us to do. He said, the government is going to want to tax us. The Banks Islanders are too wealthy. They want to start taxing them. That's how the government got in. All through the years, they finally had success with Hamlet going into every little settlement.
What did you think the first time you saw a nun?
Oh, my Lord. How am I going to describe it? Without telling us, my mom and dad, my mom is always a leader, put the kids to school. We don't know what school is. We went to this big building, all rock, windows. We went to this door, we went in. When we went in, my dad was talking to the father. He had a big cloak. I'd never seen anything like it. Had a big black cloak right to his feet, and a big beard, and a big cross hanging here, a big cross with a big sash around his waist. And what is that? I thought to myself, my dad's talking to him, so it must be okay. And I look at that, I don't know if she was a woman or what, then her tone of her voice, it was a white woman, I should say. It was a nun, I didn't know at the time. But she had funny-looking bonnet. She was bald-headed. You could see, but covered with bonnet. And a long dress, and a long black sash right down the middle, her waist, down to her ankle length as her skirt. It was so scary. What kind of people is that, to myself? And I had my little sister, only 5 years old, and my brother was about 6 or 7, and I was 9. I thought to myself, going on 10. I thought to myself, what is that? And they talked for a while, and pretty soon my dad opened the door, and I wanted to go with him. I wanted to go, and the nun grabbed us, and the priest took off in a hurry, just left the nun. And we started crying and yelling and screaming, and all of a sudden the nun gave me a big slap on the side of my head and my cheek. She meant business, I thought, I never get that treatment before. So I looked at her, and I hung on to my little sister. She was crying. I scratched the door knob and to open the door to get out. Couldn't do it. She was jerking us and everything else. Didn't tell us no kind treatment or anything. It was so harsh, hard, and that's the way I remember it. That was a school.
How long you spent there?
3 years. We didn't go home 1 year. But what traumatized my sister Mabel, she always had that light on 24 at night. She never puts it out. She did something, sister told her to do bedtime, and she always crawl in with me. Because, that's the way we were raised. When you're a big family, you take care of your young ones. She'd crawl in with me. And the nun said, no, 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 no. And she wouldn't listen, and nun just dragged her down the cellar basement, to the basement where the furnace is. Pitch dark, nothing in there but cordwood. All night she was down there cold and crying all night. She said she had no more crying. If I went to help her, I'll get the same treatment. From that day, she never went without light to go to bed. And that's the way the nuns, some of them weren't too bad, but some of them were just, I don't know where they find their cruelness. You don't no matter what, whose kid or child it is, you don't be that cruel. You talk to them. You talk to them first to understand, what's happening, why you're here. There was no such thing. And to begin with, I was left-handed, so left-handed. I went to first morning of class. They let us sit on the desk and I started writing my left hand. The nun came over and took my pencil out and, no, she says. And, I didn't really understand what she meant. Next morning, the same thing. Took the pencil off, this time with a ruler, wooden ruler with the sharp edge. She hit my hand and put it on my right hand. Devil's hand, devil's child. What are we supposed to do? We don't get that treatment at home. Just because I'm left-handed. To this day, I sew and cut and everything with my left hand, but I still do. When I think of, grab my pen, I think of the nun hitting my left hand to write right hand. Now I can write right hand, but it's just a thought that I was very left-handed. I'm still am. If I have to use, I will, but it's just that you're devil's child, devil's hand. So what's that supposed to mean?
This is an Aklavik?
I was Aklavik.
And which side, Catholic or Anglican?
Catholic. And then one year we didn't make it home. It's so much ice. My parents just had time to go to Tuck. Never made it to Aklavik. They went right back to Banks Island. What we did was summertime, all the kids that didn't go home to their parents for the summer, they said, oh, we're going out with barge. They said, we'll see what we could do in the barge. Maybe help the brothers with the wood. What they did was out in the bush where the brothers had about a long, some of them are heavy. They put the girls in a row, and then boys are down as heavier where they could pile up the big barge. All day we're like that. Some of the times we just almost drop it. It's so heavy. We're just little kids, 10 years old, going on 11. Heavy. All day we fill the barge up for the winter. I don't know if sometimes you're full of bruise, but you're just a kid. You just don't pay attention to it. And that's what we did. I can remember that mosquitoes and.
How did you get out of it? So did you tell your parents and then they took you out after the third year?
No. You mean from third year?
Yeah, like how did you get out of residence?
My dad. I told him, Dad, I don't want to go back. Of course, my mom is ready to shift us back into the school. I didn't think Mom wasn't ready to have children, eh?
Yeah.
Because the rest of half of them were going Banks Island again. She sent half of them again to the school on Anglican. Yes, we were going to Sax Harbor and we didn't make it. We ended up in Baillie Island. So much ice. We travel with the ice. If the ice says no, we can't do nothing. Wherever our schooner is, the ice can't move us. That's where you winter.
So you wintered in Baillie?
Mm-hmm. All your supplies. My dad had to trap way up to Horton River, Jason River, Anderson River. We docked him. We went all the way to Nunloch, where I was born, to hunt muskrats that spring. That took us one whole day driving with dogs to Stanton. From Stanton, we cut across the bay from Stanton and then take a left, like a straight, towards Nunloch. we camped at Saunders Creek. It's a deep creek. My dad said, we'll camp here tonight. With all the children and Dragon, Willie, and my grandmother, Emma, they had their own teams, and my dad with all our children and everything. But at the same time, so we camped there. When we camped there, my dad said, the dogs are smelling. It's a deep creek, eh? He said, where I tied the dogs there, just keep smelling, there's something there. So he went out to feed the dogs, and after that he started digging, and here he found a whole carcass of bowhead that washed into that creek. And that's where the dogs were smelling. Underneath where he dig up for the dogs, the oil, nothing wrong with it, so the dogs had a good feed.
What was Stanton like back then?
There was just a priest there, and there was 3 families. There was old Johnson Offshore with his adopted son, Donald Silautiak. He had a wife and a boy and 2 girls. 3 girls, I think 2 girls. And then there was Kimmickson family. There were 3 brothers in the family of Kimmickson, Freeman's wife, Cora, and the bachelors there, these brothers. And Kudukak family, Mary, and there's Mona. Mary went to school. She was a daughter of Billy Trasher, the famous pilot for the missionaries, with that Lady of Lourdes. It was him.
So when you stop at Stanton, you visit, you have some food, you overnight maybe?
We'd pitch up tent. And while we got there, to our surprise, here comes a plane. Never see a plane. Here was a people hauling into the mission house, and we were there. He said, time for x-ray. They're going to take people's x-ray. Yeah. And the reindeer herders were in Anderson River. There was Edwin Allen. There was Gus Tardif, Papa Nuttall's family. They sent them in from Cambridge Bay. And Peter Rufus's family. I think Peter Rufus was there. So, and then surrounding, they have the herders, what I name you. But anyhow, in the same time, they said, okay, for x-ray. X-ray? What the heck for? Out in the boonies? Here comes the x-ray technicians, the Dr. Callahan. And then Dr. Horn and all these technicians. So we're in there, and you start taking our clothes off, to the waist, and you're shy and everything else. And Mom got mad at the priest, Father Rayon. I said, what's wrong with you, Father? I said, can't you put a blanket for curtain? I said, have a little decency, my mom told Father. You can't just be out there, we can't just strip ourselves in front of people we don't know. I said, okay, Father said. So I put a string across and put gray blankets on where the x-ray, put a blind on it. But it was decent, and they gave us a needle on both arms. They never told us what it was for. Nothing. Not a thing. Next day we had to stay in our tent because next day we're all dragging ourselves, headache and fever and everything else. But they didn't say what it was going to be the cause of our giving us needles. They never had any x-ray in their life. So this kid, one of Adam Kimmickson's youngest boy, he was so bad. Never seen an x-ray before, and they're chasing the dogs, pups, poking them, and he said, x-ray. You never heard of x-ray, poking the dogs, and all they could think of was x-ray. And they told him, Daima, don't. The elders trying to tell him, but he was so mischievous, eh? Well, they'd never seen any x-ray machine before. So that I remember imitating. But anyhow, next day my dad said, "You feel better?" We all feel better, so we harnessed our dog team. That's when we ended up in that Saunders Creek, and we went to where my dad's gonna set up a tent for hunting muskrats. That's how far we had to go for hunting muskrats. And that's where I was born, right in Nulloch, right in the bottom of Liverpool Bay. It's Coolgallach is only 16 miles down into the, like a sound, a river, because it binds with William River and Coolgallach River and goes down to Nulloch. It's an open channel like goes out to the arms, eh? So that's where I was born, and we went down to our cabin, and somebody had wintered there, and everything was just there sitting and just going there, but he didn't take care of it. I know who is a guy, but sometimes people would be listening and watching you. Oh, they get mad at you for nothing, but this person should have had sense enough to ask my dad, "Can I use your cabin for the winter?" I mean, people, that's how we were raised, and we don't like it. I'm sure he wouldn't like somebody locked up a cabin and break it and open it in winter. Because when I got in there, and I thought, boy, my folks had a good living, had those old stove enamel, big stove, cook stove, with a tank on it on the side, with enamel lids and everything else, the top. And my mom had a set of table matching old cupboards, cabinets, and then had a spring bed, the old beds, linoleum. It was just nice in there, and that's where I was born. So they just locked it and left to go to Banks Island. 1937, I was born there. So they had to leave in the 40s to go into Tuck and everything else, because my grandfather had the schooner. They had a house across, but later on they moved right into my mom's or dad's house, into that old log house. At the same time, people were too lazy to hard flooring and everything. I seen it in Longhouse, and all the cookstove papers and trunks. We know who did it, but they start taking all the wood off. Too lazy to go out and get wood. They start knocking other people's stuff, just laziness, that's all. There's tree line right up there. And that's how destructive elders are sometimes. They don't respect nobody's stuff.
Is it okay if we use the stuff that you talked about residential school? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
It was totally separate from the father's house, the hospital, the girls' school, and the nuns' dorm, and the boys' school, and the nuns, or there was no priests and fathers looking after us, nothing.
Oh, okay. It was totally separate.
It's totally separate.
Yeah.
Once in a while, the only time I see father is when I say Sunday, like I got mad at sister. I think my mind was still at my sister being punished. Sunday came and she just pulled my blankets out. She never said nothing. 6 a.m, pulled it back, and she never said it. I put it back on me. Second time she came, she pulled it out again. I put it back. I didn't say nothing. She come back third time, said, "Agnes, you got to go to church." I said, "Sister, I'm not a Catholic. I don't have to go to church if I don't want to. It's not my church. I'm not a Catholic. I'm Anglican." In the back of my head, how they say Anglican people are devils. I said, "I'm not going to church." Then she come back real slow, and Agnes, we all have to go to church sometimes. Only then she gave in, then I gave in. So it was just, what do you call that? So at first time, without saying anything, I didn't say. But I told her I didn't have to go to church because I wasn't a Catholic. I don't have to go to church where they just pray to statues and everything else in there.
Yeah.
Who you supposed to pray to?
Yeah.
Says you don't see God, there's nothing but statues in there. And the priest up there talking Latin, you can't understand what they're saying.
Yeah, it's crazy. Your dad have a Bible? Was he religious?
Never see Bibles. Just when I was growing up, my mom had a big Bible. She used to read us Bible all the time, every Sunday. That's just the way my grandmother was. Real Anglican, fanatic, religious, because she went to school when she was 5 and her sister 6 years old. Their parents died. They were from Alaska and they migrated all the way to Whitehorse. And the missionaries got hold of them and sent them to Hay River. So she went there and then she went back. Half of their Kikaviches, the big chiefs,
Yeah.
some of them were left behind in Old Crow and Johnny K came here. So there's half of them. Most of them came to McPherson.
Okay. Yeah.
So she ended up, before she got married, she was living with the Whittigers. That's in Herschel Island area. The Reverend Whittigers. So it had to be 1800, late 1800, 1900s, eh?
Really?
Because when you read in the books that I've read, the Whittigers were in 1800s, in the latter part of 1800s and the ending of 1800s to the early 1900s. So the missionaries, so the Bishop Bumpus was the first one over in Inuvialuit, the Bishop Fry, and that was Bishop Fry and, oh God, I should know the names. They were the first, Bishop Bumpus was the first one in Inuvialuit, because the people were there very abrupt people. I mean, they want something, they take it, eh? And then he had a cooking pot, and this Eskimo came over to Bishop Bumpus and he was going to grab it, and he didn't know how to make them understand this person, eh? So all he could say was, "Dat out gusia, dat out gusia." I said, "Grandfather's pot, grandfather's pot." That's what he's saying in Inuvialuit. So this other, the chief, the head of the Inuvialuit, told Bishop, "Leave him, let him go. He's a very mean person. He's gonna kill you." So Bishop had to let his pot go, and that's the way. A lot of them is very determined. I want this, and that's just the way the Inuvialuit were determined people. When they want something, they take it and they let you know. They're very firm.
I could talk about this stuff all day. How next time, remind me what we should talk about Inuvialuit. How long did you live in Inuvialuit? A couple of years when you were young?
Never was there, but every spring, when we were in Tuck, we'd go there to hunt geese.
Okay.
But that's where my dad grew up,
Yeah.
and my grandfather's store was there.
So if you have any of their stories, you could tell us next time.
Okay, because
All right.
they used to have a steamboat coming from Aklavik,
Yeah.
all the way from Alberta, and
Wow.
all the way to Hudson Bay. It was a Hudson Bay there.
Yeah.
My grandfather managed it.
What was the name of the steamboat?
Aklavik sternboat. Aklavik. It was a stern boat. Steamboat, they call them stern boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, wood. Use a wood, yeah,
Right on.
steamer, what
That's
they
awesome.
call it, yeah. So that's, you see, I'm not very young after all.
No. But you got a sharp memory, that's for sure.
Oh, thank you. Think so, eh?
Yep. I can barely remember what I had for lunch yesterday.
Well, what my grandfather told me when I was growing up, I'll tell you this, he was from Delta, he was descending from Alaska. I tested him. I said, "Dad," and I said, "Grandfather, in Eskimo, tell me that story you told me." Which one, granddaughter? The one you always told me, the one I like, I told. And he knew exactly which one I meant. I said, granddaughter, I'm going to tell you. One time, you listen to me. When I tell you that story, you remember it. Oh, that story I'm going to tell you. You remember that. But second time, if I tell you the same story, you don't forget it. You know it all. But if I tell you the third time, you can't learn nothing. You won't know.
Yeah.
You won't remember. So he's seen something in me, and that's what he told me. It was some kind of it's like the fairy tale stories, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
It's one story about like crows and stuff like that. They always have mostly crow stories when you were how the man is lazy and the woman have to pull the wife and everything else. Where they get the idea, I don't know about the crows, and they put, I think it's themselves, they put it into a crow.
Yeah.
So that was a story that he says, we got no paper to write. You have to remember it. That I remember.
Wow.
I was 8 years old. 9. He told me that. I never forgot that. It stuck on my head.
Where would he tell you stories?
He told me when my dad and him would go out for 3 weeks trapping. He'd come home, he'd lay down, everybody relax, and my grandfather in bed would start telling stories. After they turned the light off, all you could hear was a tick tick of the clock, and my grandfather telling the stories. And always, I was so spoiled. I said I was raised by my grandparents, and I was always beside my grandmother. That was the most safest place that I remember. But my grandfather come home, I have to go maybe to my uncles. There was Edward, Timothy, and Sam. No, I didn't feel right. There was my 2 aunties, Winnie and Helen. Then I'd go crawl over in one of them beside Helen. And I got my bed back there, but it looked so dark, and my parents. So I'd rather sleep on this side of my grandparents and aunts and uncles.
This is in a 10 by 12? What is this in?
It was 2 by 10, 14 tents.
Oh.
They're put together.
2 by 10 by 14.
Yeah.
So 20 by 20 by 24.
Because
40.
one end was for my parents.
Yeah.
And the other one was for my grandparents.
Yeah.
And then the stove was right in the middle. This is Lenny Harbor, Banks Island.
Wow.
Their dwellings are quite different because you don't come in there just ready-made dwellings.
Yeah, yeah.
A big house, big tent.
Yeah.
But they wait for the ice to thicken. October, we have cook stove that's burning with coal. There's no wooden Banks Island, nothing. They bring all that lumber, and I see where, sometimes it's short of lumber, where it's floor and everything else, and nice gravelly. But what they do is saw ice blocks with those big old saws, 4 feet by 6 feet, and with dogs. There's Sam, my dad, and my grandfather, and Timothy. They haul it up to the tent, quite a ways up to the bank from the bay. With mudsled, flat mudsled, put big lumber on it. And they stand them up, leave a gap about an inch more, all the way around. And after they stand all the locks, they make a pathway from the door. They make another for food, dry goods, and another one for flours and cornmeal, and another one for their caribou meat and stuff. Once they stand up the ice, they slush it all.
So it's like a tent on the inside and an ice igloo on the outside.
Yeah, and the big blocks of snow. Then when they have a moss, there's a lot of moss when you can find it. They put rafters on a roof,
Yeah.
and they always have windows that keeps the heat warm from the sun.
We thank you for tuning in on today's episode, listening to Agnes White tell her stories in Inuvialuit and in English. We hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next live show.